ask
Can you
us
all
hospital.
can you all hear me? Just confirming.
Yes, we hear you. It's a little bit choppy, but we got you.
Okay, we ready, Peter?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the Board of Continuing Legal Education meeting. Members of the board are hereby advised of their duty under the State Government Ethics Act to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflict, and are instructed to refrain from participating in any matter coming before this board with respect to which there's a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict. Before we get started, I want to let y'all know there is going to be a guest joining us at some point. Peter will let us know when he is waiting.
Yeah, he's here in the waiting room, so I can let him in when whenever we're ready, and it's an open meeting.
Okay. You're right, it's an open meeting, so whenever.
I'm going to let Mr. Blaine in right now.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. Blaine. Still connecting. Well, while he's connecting, has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the July 13th, 2023 meeting?
Yes.
There any questions, corrections, edits that need to be made?
This is Dayton. I have one suggestion. Unless Peter and Deborah already have the record set up in a way that suits them better. On the minutes, I would suggest that we include a copy of the rules amendment that was adopted at the last meeting as part of the minutes, just to have a complete record of what that action was.
We will do that.
That's an excellent recommendation, Dayton. Thank you. Any other recommendations, suggestions, corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve them with the addition from Dayton?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Okay. Dayton, are you going to give us a second?
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought I made the motion.
Oh, I thought Paul did. I must have misread who was speaking.
Oh, I'll second it, but I wasn't there, so I hesitate to chime in.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Okay. The meetings of the July 13th, 2023 meeting are approved as submitted with Dayton's edit. Okay. Peter, do you want to go with your report, or should we jump ahead to our guest?
I think we can jump ahead to Mr. Blaine. Benton Blaine is here. You saw in the materials some of the correspondence between he and Deborah related to request for us to reconsider the prohibition against in-house CLE training. I think Mr. Blaine wanted to appear and certainly have the floor to talk about it, and then we can discuss. I can give you a little bit of history and show you what the rest of the country does. You know, it's pretty split from different states, and then the board can kind of consider whether or not this is a matter you want me to study and present recommendations or propose changes at a next meeting. I think this is the kind of thing maybe would be useful for a retreat topic if this was something the board was interested in. So I'll leave it over to you, Mr. Blaine.
Mr. Blaine, do you mind turning your camera on so we can hear you or see you as well?
Oh yeah, that's happy to do it. You're going to see me driving to the Austin airport.
Well,
So yeah, no, happy to do it. I'm going to look this way, but I assume you're going to look at me. Sorry, I had a meeting on a couple hours too late today. It happened. So really appreciate the time. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I can give you a little bit of background, and again, I do want to be cognizant of your time and not to use too much of it. Background, so I am an attorney by trade. I do a specialty practice called site selection. I analyze labor, logistics, taxation, real estate. I figure out where to build manufacturing plants. Many of your clients, if you represent corporate North Carolina, a lot of those I actually put in the state. So how it came up is, you know, I did 5 years at Ernst & Young. I did about 4 years at McGuire Woods Consulting. On the consulting side, their lobbying arm of McGuire Woods, a law firm. I'm now at Cushman & Wakefield. I've always done the exact same thing. So I picked up, though, in same practice. So we take, especially whether it be the real estate brokers, the accountants, or at the law firm, there's a focus on professional and mental health, substance abuse, and then everyone has a continuing training requirement. What I started to notice is I actually spent 2022 and I tracked all my training time. What I found out is I would end up taking multiples of the exact same course just to meet different requirements. So to give you a background, I was taking a substance abuse, 2 hours of that at McGuire Woods every year. I take 2.5 hours of that at Cushman & Wakefield every year. Because those are in-house trainings, now again, they're made by a third party. I think they put the Cushman & Wakefield logo on the front of it and just sample that, and that's how they sell it. But it's the exact same thing that any one of your firms or Ernst & Young or any kind of small law firm could as well. It's the exact same training. So I was taking that training and I started to notice what triggered this is I saw the exact same slide on my in-house training that I did in supplemental kind of NC CLE requirement training that I then went out and paid for. And that was the epiphany of, I think I'm just taking the exact same class twice, and one of which I pay for. So I wanted to open it up. And again, the goal is not holistic. I think I understand the principle, but Peter, would love for you to expand on that of how it came to be. I'm assuming it's to allow open and easier access for attorneys to meet that training requirement and to continue to grow professionally. But I just wanted to bring up many of, at least the larger firms, and whether this is in-house, Duke Energy, or more in the professional services, you're going to see that there's JD licensed members of the bar and more field than a traditional law firm. I'm sure that's going to become more and more common. And we end up kind of duplicating on it. So while I'd love to see it at a holistic level account for all of the training hours, I guess that the easier and low hanging fruit would be for the technical training. And again, I think I take no less than 8 hours of kind of computer-based spam, phishing emails, how not to get scammed, etc. training. And then I'm having to look up at the end of the year and Google and just pay a random company for that technical and IT training as well. So ask today, and maybe we dive into on the technical training on the substance abuse, if the company offers it, can there be an argument made and outlined to where that's going to be as good, if not better, than what I can go out onto the open market and purchase, and should those hours need to be duplicated? So sorry, that was the longest. I tried. My goal was to knock that out in 90 seconds. I went considerably over that.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine. This is a request that I know Deborah can confirm with. We get a request, similar requests like this often. I was looking through the minutes. The in-house CLE prohibition has been in the rule since it was originally adopted. The CLE rules were originally adopted, and I'm looking at the minutes from a meeting in 1997 when there was a request from about in-house CLE and firm-based CLE, and the minutes talk about that the rule was originally adopted because of a concern about quality control if law firms were allowed to put on their own programs, and because of the desire to encourage collegiality among members of the bar. At that point, the board decided that if these programs are not open to outside attorneys, that they should not be approved. Now, just as a little information as it relates to the rest of the country, I can share with you kind of do you guys see the Excel screen here?
Yes.
Yes.
So the rest of the country is pretty split on this. You know, you have some that just, yeah, this is fine. As long as it's sent in and accredited and approved, just like any other course, then a firm could offer their own in-house CLE. You have some that are kind of like our rule that talk about activities have to be advertised and open to anyone that we thought be interested in the subject matter. Some have limits on the number of hours you could get from in-house CLE. And so it does vary. I think that there's not a consensus nationally on whether this should be allowed or prohibited. I will say here in Carolina, we have, it has always been prohibited. Now the collegiality argument was raised when we were discussing the cap on online education and on-demand courses, and we determined that shouldn't be enough of a reason to prohibit lawyers from taking, unlimited on-demand courses. And so I would argue that shouldn't be the main reason why we keep in-house CLE prohibited. However, I think it would, depending on your desires, is be a matter worthy of study with some recommendations or a report that we could further consider and determine whether there should be a rule change. I'm hesitant to do any rule changes right now because we're right in the middle of implementing all of the new rules and overhaul. We need a chance to get that off the ground, but if we were going to consider this change, in the spring of next year, then that would be a lot more helpful than try to amend the rules again right now while we're trying to program and design all of the new changes that we just implemented for the big review.
Yeah.
Peter, I have a question.
Sure.
And this is to Mr. Blaine. Does McGuire Woods elect not to submit the training for CLE credit?
So they would have the formalized CLE. So if they did Supreme Court update, yeah, that was submitted. But to my knowledge, the substance abuse and IT training every year, no, none of that was submitted. And because
you know why they don't submit it?
It's not open to the public.
Okay.
So they're going to train us, like IT is going to be trained on our operating system, on our computers with our specific apps. So that's why it's not going to be open to the public.
Gotcha. I mean, I used to do CLE for an AMLAW 100 firm, and we would open it to the public. No one would ever show up, but we would still make sure our attorneys got credit for it. Yeah, no, those were, but the IT, substance abuse, a lot of that is not. And I don't know. It'd be interesting. I don't want to open up a rabbit hole. How much of that training is submitted every year, as far as like the tertiary classes? I know the larger law firms do, but I can tell you, like at Ernst & Young, I probably did 40 hours of education per year. We could submit it, but you had to do that on your own time, own dime. So that was the toughest piece about that. I think, and again, I'm requesting this as someone who doesn't practice law in a traditional format. I understand it's, I hate to use the word slippery slope. I despise it. We placed it as a bingo term for the longest time. But, where do you draw the line? I like the idea of limit it to a certain number of hours per year, versus a blank slate. It's just, do we bring it in and kind of update the model, understanding that
on a percentage basis, because how this conversation came up was a lot of attorneys at Duke and B of A that don't practice in their legal departments going, hey, we spend just as many hours, but since we're not in the legal department, that time never gets submitted. So is there a way to update that model kind of to reflect what we're seeing as far as the legal profession as a whole? And I'll also tell you again, compared to what I did at Cushman and Wakefield, as far as the substance abuse training is substantially more in depth, and it's a longer course than I think the one I took that I bought online that said, don't kill yourself last year to meet the requirement, just being blunt. The classes that we're taking to meet our insurance requirements tend to be fairly substantial. As far as implementation, I would defer to the expertise of this committee.
Does anyone else have any questions for Blaine?
Blaine, I do. Are you proposing this change be only for non-traditional law companies or in-house legal departments? Are you suggesting that it applies to law firms as well?
Ooh, that's a fantastic question, Paul. Not a bad idea to do that. Just because if you do work at a traditional law firm, right, they're going to have that host of internal CLEs that they self-register. Whereas if you work for a Duke Power, for instance, has dozens, and Bank of America is probably the best example, with hundreds of attorneys that are not in the legal department. That could be a way to limit the scope. Although in general, I don't love the idea of trying to bifurcate traditional versus non-traditional. At the end of the day, we're all attorneys within the state, but that is a potential solution.
All right.
Mr. Blaine, you
Thank
may
you.
already be aware of this, but if you're a member of an Association of Corporate Counsel, they offer 12 hours of free CLE every year in North Carolina and various cities, most prominently in Raleigh, RTP, and Charlotte.
I've never heard those words before, the Association of Corporate Counsel. But no, I would generally target, so for instance, like in the finance department at Bank of America, I think they have a couple hundred attorneys. They're not going to report to B of A legal. They're just attorneys that happen to work there in the compliance department, finance, et cetera.
And one of the things that's required for CLE by the state bar is written materials. Would that also be a component of what you're proposing? I mean, it would pretty much have to be, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah. And what is the definition of written? Does a PowerPoint deck? I mean, we can print it, but yeah. So in all the training that I'm doing, there's always going to be some background. A lot of them apps, that they're forcing you to click and open every box. If that met the definition of written material, then I think we would be, okay. And that's again why I think you make the argument of, is what is being done in-house potentially more robust than what you can buy online. For instance, the one at Cushman, I have to open every box. Some of them now, software, they actually tell if you read the documentation. They're really forcing you to pay attention to the material versus you can go online, get a substance abuse outline, scroll through it pretty quick. How do you actually frame that to make sure the quality doesn't drop in the future? I think the devil's in the details, but at least at the high level, I think you can get higher quality content, out of these medium and larger size firms. Again, and it may be a point to bring it up. I think a lot of that is being driven by insurance requirements now. So is there a way to dive into that? Hey, maybe if it meets this insurance requirement, it satisfies ours because our goals are aligned. I'm just trying to think of an easy way to check compliance on that. That's a potential solution.
Obviously, like Peter mentioned to begin with, there's a lot that we would have to study. This is nothing that the board could vote on today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I was just throwing out again, I think, and I kind of live by it, time is the only asset that we can't buy more And you had mentioned that this issue has come up before. If there's a way to get the attorneys in the state better content, educated at a better level and save time across the board, and it's happening. I don't know if this is happening hundreds of times a year, or maybe it's thousands of times a year, times it by, multiple hours per person, you end up with a fairly large gap in time that may be better suited again to, additional learning or quality time. If the goal is to prevent burnout and learn how to deal in stress and cope with the day-to-day work environment, I don't know if, again, employees being put under 10, 20, 30, 40 hours of CLEs from different departments telling them how to better manage their time meets that goal, to be more candid.
Well, and this might be, something that I think if the board wants me to look into it, one of the things I would recommend is distinguishing between live CLEs put on by the board and on-demand programs that are offered by the firm. Live CLE programs that are just with the lawyers in-house. I think that, back when all of this was being considered, was certainly much more of the concern is that they'd get together and just talk shop and then give themselves CLE credit for it. But if you had an on-demand program that people had to take internally, that otherwise, if someone got off online and got online and took the same course, would satisfy our requirements. Is there really should there be a prohibition from that firm being the one that is sending it, to the lawyer to take, as long as they submit it and get it approved for credit? So I think that's something that we can look at and see if if there's a distinguishing thing for those on-demand ones versus the live ones where you get everybody in a room and you really have no quality control on what they're really talking about, regardless of what they submitted to you. But Mr. Blaine, I've got to move this along. I'm sorry, we've got to.
Oh, no, thank you for the time today.
If members of the board are so inclined, I'm happy to study this and put together a little report and some, with information on what other states do and what our options would be for us to consider at another meeting.
Thank you, Peter. We will talk about that. Thank you, Mr. Blaine. Peter, you want to give your report?
Yes. So the matter that we needed to be here to officially do is to approve the fee schedule. Recommend this fee schedule to the council for the October meeting. And it's in your materials. It has not changed since we discussed this in March. I think this is the right way to go for our first effort at this. Just as a heads up, it does, the annual CLE fee would begin being assessed, in the 2024 dues process. The good news is that it looks likely that we're again not going to have a client security fund assessment this year for 2024, and we're not going to have a dues increase. And so, I don't think we're going to have a shock to the lawyer system that they have to pay another $25, because it looks like right now, from the numbers we've seen, that this would still just be, then they'd have to pay a total of $325, which is a number that they're used to having to pay when they pay the state bar. So I think that's going to work out well for us as it relates to that annual CLE fee that would be assessed and charged during the dues process. But this is the fee schedule we've been talking about, and we just the new rules and anticipate that this would be recommended to the council and on an annual basis, and for their approval at the October meeting.
Any questions, comments? Is this something we need to vote on or just make a recommendation?
I think it is something you would need to vote on.
Paul?
If it's in order, Adrian, I'll move that the board approve the fee schedule as presented and recommend its adoption by the State Bar Council.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that with what there's a typo. So I just want to point that out.
Thank you.
If you look at the, under the fee for sponsors, under the late attendance reporting fee, I think it's missing a not. No new programs will be approved. Oh, no, never mind. Well, never mind. Yeah,
It's good.
I second it.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's good. It's good.
Okay.
Okay.
I've shared this with a lot of people. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little under the weather, if you can't tell. So
Okay, sure.
pardon me. Yeah.
Any further discussion? All in agreement with the motion and the second, raise your hand. Any opposed, say nay. Addie got fancy on us. Okay, the motion passes.
And if I'll give you a brief update on a few matters, we are having a town hall, YouTube, Zoom, virtual town hall next week that we've invited CLE sponsors to attend, so I can go over the new rules and answer any questions. We have maxed out our registration for the Zoom, and so there'll be a lot of sponsors that are also just watching on YouTube, and we'll be able to submit chat questions on YouTube, and we'll do another one of these in October, especially once we have the CLE sponsor portal available to be able to be shown and walk through how that's all going to work, our program development. But this will give us a chance to kind of explain the new rules, the timetables, and the plans for getting courses approved for the 2024 CLE year, and how everything, we intend for that to work. So that will be next week. We're going to do one of these YouTube town hall for lawyers as well, so they can attend and hear about the new rules, and continue to put information in the journal and on the website and social media as we continue to try to get everybody to know that these changes are going into place in March 2024. We've been working to develop programs and develop the internal programming, and our CLE staff is now meeting on a bi-weekly basis to go over this process and make sure that we're on track for March and that everything's in place, and we're going to continue to do that and try to hope for a smooth rollout as we can in this process.
Awesome. That October members town hall.
Yes, I'll send out a link to the board if you wanted to watch next week's YouTube town hall, and I'll send out one. We'll obviously send out one for everyone for the lawyer one, and if you want to be inside the Zoom part of that too, you certainly can if they have questions for the board at all.
Okay, perfect.
But I'll make sure to cover you so you don't have to answer any tough questions. I can take those.
I appreciate the heck out of that. Other question, Julie's laughing. Julie and I spent some quality time together in Hickory last week. Other questions, issues, any new business for the board? Let's readdress the issue from the proposal from Mr. Blaine at next month's meeting, so we can make a recommendation to you after we've all had a chance to think about what he's proposed. Okay, and I'll do some more research just to be able to answer any basic questions you guys have as well. Okay, perfect. Any other? Okay, I'm sorry, if there's nothing else, I've got to go start another meeting that people are waiting on. Go. It's been a crazy week over here. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.